Yeah, guys. Yesterday we discussed about switch, and we'll discuss more about switch, and as well as we discussed yesterday access uh, port or link access link we discussed, and trunk link is discussed yesterday. Trunk port, or you can say as a trunk link. And we establish a connection between same VLAN also. Same VLAN, how they communicate, establish, we can communicate, we did a lab yesterday's. And trunk port also enabled. Any queries in this? And MAC table in depth we discussed, and some basic configuration we did, router basic configuration also we did. Basic config also we did yesterday. How to assign the ports on router, and how if by default those ports are shut down state, with the no shut command will use, and we assign the IP address also, and no shut command we up that ports, we make it as a up that ports. Yesterday we did, and I have given the task also. If you have any queries, ask me one to one. So today our topic is here. Today topics are Inter VLAN routing will discuss. Inter VLAN routing will discuss today. And for this, we need a trunk encapsulation methods. Yesterday I have given brief about the trunk encapsulation methods. Two methods we have, .1Q as well as ISL. So .1Q is a open standard method, and ISL is a Cisco proprietary, as we discussed yesterday. So for that we'll use, and total we have a for this inter VLAN routings. So three ways to configure. One is legacy method, and router agnostic method, and multi-layer switch. We'll discuss three methods today. For these three methods we have, step by step we'll discuss. These are our today topic, inter VLAN routing. Yeah, and it's a important topic. Now, so whenever in organizations they will use for communication of what is inter VLAN routing. First we'll understand what is inter VLAN routing. Then we'll move. So in yesterday, so the mostly we have taken two switches, and we assumed like two, these are the first floor switch, and this is the second floor switch, and these are the access layer switches, and sorry, it's both are in access layer switches. And this switches having the first floor means different departments we have, like account departments and marketing departments, sales department. Those are the different users they are using in first floor. And here also same thing, account department, sales department, and management department, and some marketing department. Both are in the those are in the different VLANs. So it's say HR department, I can assume it's a VLAN 10, V10, and it's 20, V20, VLAN 20. So it's 30, V30, VLAN 30, and it's 40, V40, VLAN 40. We assume. So same thing, same configuration here also. So 10, 20, 30, and 40 at second floor. For by default, same VLAN only. In this port, we configure as a trunk port. It's a trunk port, and we configured yesterday. It's an access port. It's an access port. Access port and trunk port. What is the main difference between access port and trunk port? What is the difference? Can anyone tell me what is the difference between access port and trunk port? Quickly.
A trunk port for one router to other router and access port from the router to the PCs.
Okay, fine for that. And apart from that,
Access port
Trunk port will
handle
only allow one-way traffic. In access port, we can make two-way.
okay, you mean to say it's full duplex and off duplex? You mean to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So, can anyone tell me this access port where will configure basically?
end devices.
Access end devices. So end devices means, so for that how many ports are available for end devices? How many ports will assign?
You're asking in a switch?
Yeah,
Or
end devices. I'm asking about the switch to end devices or anything. Where will configure access port and what is the responsibilities of access port?
It will carry the information of a single VLAN.
Good. Okay. Yeah, that is what.
Whenever
And what about the trunk?
trunk port handle traffic for multiple VLANs.
Yes. So mostly where will configure? In between switch to router or switch to switch or switch to server. So switch to router also will configure and switch to server will configure. Apart from that, switch to again, don't confuse here. Switch to server for requirement part will access port also will configure. Some in data centers will configure likewise also. So here we'll assign like single VLANs. So for in data centers, mostly we have servers only. In the servers, we'll assign this can be access port also. If we have multiple VLANs, so whenever you will assume like we have multiple VLAN, we have to carry the information, multiple VLAN information, more than one, that time will configure trunk port. Wherever it is, router or server or wherever. And access port modes, so it will be carry the single VLAN information. So not only PC, it not only server, it's IP phone also. IP phone also will configure. Voice over IP phone, those scenarios based will configure it. So those are the main difference between access ports and trunk port. And trunk port will carry the multiple VLAN information. So now move from here. We have a VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, VLAN 40. So here, if we configured here also in between access port, trunk port is not there. So we need a multiple connectivities in between switches. So we are wasting our resources. So we need a multiple. So for this traffic is VLAN 10. So this traffic is VLAN 20. This port is connected. We are wasting our resources. 30. And this port is for VLAN 40. How many? If you have 100 VLANs, we need 100 ports. So in switches, we don't have that many ports. So we are wasting our resources. That is the reason we need a trunk port. So that is the reason we are configuring in between switches trunk port only. Even though we can use the redundancy part, multiple links up to 4, that time will configure ether channel, that is port channel. The concept is different, but these all are the redundancy part. So leave it that now. For time being, we'll discuss later on. So now move to the anyone have any questions about same VLAN configuration and same VLAN how they are establish a connection between? These are the intra VLAN, and now move to the inter VLAN. Inter VLAN means, so now I got a requirement. Here we have a first floor access switch again, and here we have a second floor access switch.
Halim.
Yes, Naveen.
So if you have a trunk port between the access and the access and the end, we don't need how many ports you'll have? Like if you have a trunk port, then you don't need multiple ports. All the ports will be connected to trunk port, and trunk port will be only one port will be connected to only one port.
Yeah, trunk port will be connected as a one port. If this port is goes down, we have a redundancy path. That is what I tried to explain it in previously. Connectivity issue, the cable issue, the rat came and rat cut this cable. So that time we have a issues, right? So that is the reason. If some connectivity issue, physical issues are so, and this is a issue from this port also, some LAN card issue, something happened. So that is the reason that time we'll use here for redundancy part, two connectivities are more than two also. So at that time we'll use port channel. The concept is different, guy, but
డెవలప్ అవుతున్నాను నేను.
can you mute yourself if you are not, you don't have any questions? So Naveen, understood?
No. You said like when there is a cable disconnectivity or cable damage, then we are using a trunk port to connect to the.
No, not likewise. So trunk port, it is a different method, and access port, it is a different. First, you will understand what is access port and what is trunk port. So access port basically will configure in between PC to switch and will configure, apart from that, switch to VoIP, voice over IP phone, or will configure switch to server, or will configure switch to router also, some cases branch connectivity. When we configure entire thing, so whenever if you are working in data center, this kind of requirement will be happen. If you are working in small organization, for you can see these things only, PC to switch and switch to voice over IP. If you are working in data center or big kind of organization, they'll use. So what happened, basically access port, first understand access port. So in better understand, I'll explain few words in Telugu. సో చూడు, ఇక్కడ యాక్సెస్ పోర్ట్ పెద్ద పని ఏం చేయదు. ఇక్కడ వచ్చేసి స్విచ్ ఉంది. ఈ స్విచ్ నుండి ఒక్క పోర్టే కనెక్ట్ ఉంది. ఇక్కడ ఒక్కటే VLAN కన్ఫిగర్ ఉంది, VLAN 10 అనుకో. ఈ VLAN 10 ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ని మాత్రమే పంపివ్వాలి అవుట్, ఎక్కడికైనా, గూగుల్కైనా ఆర్ ఎక్కడికైనా, బయటికి ఏదైనా డిఫరెంట్ బ్రాంచ్ కైనా, ఆర్ డిఫరెంట్ బ్రాంచ్ కి అనుకో, డిఫరెంట్ బ్రాంచ్ ఏదైనా బ్రాంచ్. సో దట్ టైం విల్ కన్ఫిగర్ ఒక్క పోర్ట్ కి మాత్రమే. కానీ ఇక్కడ ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటిదంటే, ఈ యాక్సెస్ పోర్ట్ ఈ బిట్వీన్ లో కన్ఫిగర్ చేసావనుకో, ఎప్పుడైతే వేరే రిసోర్సెస్, ఒకవేళ ఇక్కడ VLAN 20 ఉంది అండ్ 30 ఉంది అండ్ 40 ఉంది కదా, ఇవన్నీ VLAN ని బయటికి పంపివ్వాలి త్రూ స్విచ్, ఒకటే కేబుల్ ద్వారా అనుకుంటే, అప్పుడు ట్రంక్ యూస్ చేస్తాం. అంటే ఆ ట్రంక్ పోర్ట్ వచ్చేసి మల్టిపుల్, ఈ ట్రంక్ పోర్ట్ వచ్చేసి మల్టిపుల్ VLAN ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ని క్యారీ చేస్తుంది. యాక్సెస్ పోర్ట్ వచ్చేసి ఒకటే VLAN ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ని క్యారీ చేస్తుంది. ట్రంక్ పోర్ట్ విల్ బి క్యారీ ది మల్టిపుల్ VLAN ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ అండ్ యాక్సెస్ పోర్ట్ విల్ బి క్యారీ ది సింగిల్ VLAN ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్. If you are, I hope you got it now. If you are not understand, then we'll do the lab also, no sure. Understood or not, Naveen? So
By having VLAN in between access and the router, by having VLAN, by having that we can do multiple connectivity. Like if you do directly with router, then we have to have port to port. One port will connect to one port, so it will have like multiple ports. But by having VLAN, by having this trunk port, Like, no, we don't need like multiple ports on the router, and we can use that as an intermediary and connect to as many ports,
VLAN
as many.
information. VLAN, as many VLANs we can transfer from one source to another, one source location to another destination location. Yes, we can transfer one source. This is, you can assume your source location, and this one is your destination location. So these are the VLANs we have.
One source
These
to
are-
multiple locations? One source to
no,
multiple?
one so. Yeah, you can assume one source. If you want to communicate, here we have a Yahoo server, here we have a Google server, here we have a Facebook server. This user wants to communicate. Then that time sessions will be established. Sessions will be established, and based on that sessions, it will be, they can outsource also multiple destinations. It will be reached based on your requirement, where you want to reach. No issue on that. Multiple destinations it will be reached. So basically the trunk port, it will be carry the multiple VLAN information, but access port, where will you configure? Only at end users. So requirement is for VLAN 1. Whenever you are configuring only one VLAN, only whenever you are configuring single VLAN, that time we need access port. Whenever you are configuring, whenever you have to transfer, you're planning to transfer source to destination, multiple together, multiple VLAN information, that time no chances. If you are using access port, it will be deny your traffic, it won't carry. If you are using in between access port means, so yes, you can use it. This is a VLAN 10, VLAN 10 user. In between, if you are using access means, okay, again one more VLAN 20 is came. You need one more connectivity, this access layer, access switch. Again, if you need one more connectivity, because you have one more 30 VLAN, you need how many VLANs are there? That many access ports are required. This is also access. If you are one more 40 VLAN 40 is there. So you need one more cable. This is VLAN 40 access port. You should have to configure it. Otherwise, here we are wasting our resources, right? I hope you got it. Here we are wasting our connectivities, our cables, our ports. So switches having maximum 24 to 48 ports only, switches. If you are wasting in between 10 ports are for VLAN transferring one switch to another, then you remaining 14 ports only. So 14 ports for what you will use that? So it's not a good planning, it's not a good architecture. So that is the reason we have to configure in between trunk. Then only trunk will carry this all the VLAN information. So okay, now you got it, I think. Okay, done. So now move to the Inter VLAN routing. Now Inter VLAN routing. So I got a one requirement here for I got a requirement here. Like again, we have a different access switches and between connectivity trunk. I am using here trunk. This is a trunk port, and we have a different VLANs. So here we have again 4 VLANs, 10, 20, 30, 40, and these are connected to access switches and same access ports. But now in this scenario, I need, earlier we don't have communication between 10 to 20. So no communication happened as earlier. So whenever we are configuring, but now my requirement is I should have to communicate from VLAN 10 to VLAN 20. By default, they won't communicate. By default, they won't communicate. Yesterday we saw in lab. But my requirement is they should have to communicate, because this is a sales department and VLAN 20 is a manager. So manager how to check the way what they are working. So manager how to check the sales guys, whichever they are working entire thing, each need access for them. So the connectivity between VLAN 10 to 20, so we have to do the connectivity. So how it will be possible? So by default, it will be not possible. So we should have to make a possible. You got a scenario or you got a task for that. So that is what inter VLAN routing. So here we have a different methods for that. So inter VLAN routing. So for this inter VLAN routing, the requirement is I have to communicate two different VLANs, more than that VLANs, more than two VLANs are. Here we have a different VLANs, VLAN 10 to make a possibility communication is between VLAN 20. So for that, we need inter VLAN routing. So how we'll configure? Here we have a three methods for that. Legacy method we are not using, so it is not scalable also. And we have a router agnostic methods as we are using, but not much more. And mostly all the branches are all the organizations, mostly this method they will use. So we'll discuss three methods also. One by one we'll discuss. So inter VLAN routing is a ability to route or send traffic between VLANs. So between VLAN, it means VLAN, different VLANs. So we have to make possibility to communicate to each other, different VLANs. So switches and VLANs work at MAC address. As we know, switches maintain which table? Only MAC table. MAC table they maintain. So switches maintain media access control table, and it is a data link layer. It means it's a layer 2, and traffic can't be routed between VLANs at layer 2 based on the MAC addresses. So basically, if we have two switches, you can assume. So this is a different subnet, and this one is a different subnet. If you are using two different subnet wants to communicate, we in this MAC basis we cannot, the MAC table, based on the MAC table we cannot routable. So we need a routing table for that. So we need a L3 device for that. If two subnets wants to communicate, two different subnets are two different VLANs, they have to communicate. That time we need a L3 devices. L3 devices means we have MLS, multi-layer switch, and we have a router. Router, it means basically routing table it will be maintained, and by default MLS also it will be act as like L2 only. It will be act as like L2 only, not it will be act as like L3. So we we have to make it as a L3 device. I'll show you. For we have a different commands for that. Whenever if you want to make L2 device to L3, we need to use one command, that is IP routing. I'll show you in lab. If we are not using IP routing, so the device will act as like again L2 only. So it will be act as like L2 only. So I'll show you in that lab. And one more thing, the switch, this MLS ports also, whichever we have a ports. So F0 by 0 something, F0 by 0 and F1 by 0 some, whichever ports, it's MLS or it's L2 switch, whichever the switch means that ports are acting as like they are the L2 ports only. It will be act as like they will I have MAC table only, based on the MAC table only I will establish a connection between based on the MAC table only. It will be assumed like. So we have to configure it as like you are in the not a L2 port. You are a now L3 port. For that, we have to use no switch port command. Then only it will be act as like. I'll show you for that also in lab. You can easily understand. And if you are not using no switch port command, it will be act as like L2 port. That time it won't accept the IP address also. It won't accept the IP address also. Okay, fine. Now move. So here we have a 3 ways to configure it, and before that, a switch can be logically segmented into separate broadcast domain using virtual local area. Yes, we discussed what is broadcast domain, and I think it is logically act as like broadcast domain. Okay. Now we have a 3 methods. First, we'll discuss legacy, and nowadays we are not using also. So, what is the reason for that? We have some drawbacks for it in legacy. That is the reason we are not using. So, router honestic method and inter VLAN routing in L3 switch. We'll discuss first legacy method. So legacy method, this is an old method and not in use nowadays. In this method, you need separate physical interfaces for each VLAN. So here you can check. So again, we are using here router. So mostly whichever router. So I'll show you in packet tracer lab only. Easily you can understand. I'll show you the switch and router. So here I am taking one router 4331. It's a router, and I'll take one switch, and it's L2 access layer switch, and here I'll take one more switch. It's multi-layer switch. So you can check here. I'll use one command for I'll check the interfaces. How many interfaces are routers having? So you can easily understand. Enter and show IP. Show IP interface brief. With this command, we can verify how many interfaces are available. This router having how many interfaces? Only 3. If in real time also, we can see mostly in under 8 only. If that switch as a more costly or something, then it will be 8. Otherwise, it will be 4, not much more also. One is for WAN, other 2 is for LAN, that much only. But you can go through multi-layer switch. So make sure you should have to. Device must be power on. So it will be take time. I'll move to access layer switch. So here you can check, enable, show IP interface brief. So here you can check how many interfaces. Fast Ethernet 0 by 1 to 24. These are the, we can use LAN ports, and these are the uplink ports. Gigabit ports means uplink ports. So mostly 24 plus 2, 26 ports we have. 26 ports, and we have like access switches 24, or apart from that we have 48 port switches also we have. And here also same thing. Both are having this many ports, but routers minimum ports. So that is the reason it is not a scalable solution, because here we have a less ports. That is the drawback, major drawback for legacy method. So here you can check. This is a router to connected to switch, and a switch is connected to different ports. So what is the reason behind that? We need a inter VLAN routing. So that is the reason we cannot achieve our goal with this method. So for example, if there is a 10 VLANs, okay, 10 VLAN, then your router must have 10 physical ports to configure inter VLAN. For this reason, it is also cost effective. So it is also cost effective. If we have 10 VLANs, we needed 10 interfaces, 10 physical interfaces. Here I have shown router having less ports. So it is not a scalable solution. Now move to the second method, router agnostic method. So here you can assume what is the difference between router agnostic method and legacy method. Here also we are using same thing, but only one physical connectivity. And that physical connectivity will use as like this is router, and router is connected to one switch. Likewise, and this switch is connected to multiple hosts, either server or IP phone or TV or tablet, smartphone. So smartphone is for Wi-Fi. Leave it now. So in access ports also, whichever. So one more thing, I'll confirm it here. If we are using so Wi-Fi also, it means access points also. That access points also we can use as like access layer only. Access layer only. Access layer means access port means it's carry the single VLAN information. So likewise, we can use. So now we are not using this entire thing. We'll use this many PCs can configure it, different VLANs. For that, what we need. So here we are using same only one port, but difference is legacy and our router agnostic method will create. So same thing, can connectivity likewise will do. So, but here we'll use in between sub interface. Earlier we have in legacy method we are using like only one, how many VLANs are available, that many ports we configured, that many physical connectivities. But now in this method, router agnostic method will configure like I'll cancel it, no need for multiple connectivities. For example, I have shown here will create sub interface, then that sub interface will configure like multiple VLANs. Like for example, I'll show you just the configuration part. For this interface, gigabit 0 by 0 by 0, and we'll use no shutdown first, and we'll exit from here, and I'll show again interface gigabit 0 by 0 by 0 dot. If you are taking 10 VLAN cell, this is the subnet. It's kind of sub interface. Show IP interface brief. So likewise, we will create sub interfaces. These are the sub interfaces. This is a logical interface. It is a logical interface. It is a logical interface. Likewise, how many you need, how many VLANs are you have. So interface gigabit 0 by 0 by 0 dot 20, and exit from here and use inter 30. So interface. So here you can check it's we logged in. We are in sub interface, sub IF. So here you can check it like this. Show IP interface brief. Likewise, we'll configure sub interfaces. How many required? So logically, it is one interface only, but we configured physically it is one interface. Logically, we did so many interfaces. How many you required? If you need hundreds of VLANs, so thousands of VLAN. Based on that, you can create it. In data center architecture, we'll use same technology. Same thing. How many customers? If you have 100 of customers in data center, we have thousands of customers. For them, we configured thousands of VLANs. thousands of VLANs in data center architecture. For that, will configure only one interface, but you cannot assume like this many thousand customers will carry for only this single interface. They'll use as a single interface, but in this single interface, the 1,000 customer information they will carry. These are the one customer you can assume. This is the second customer, third customer, fourth customer. Thousands of customers will use based on your sub interface.
For adding multiple sub-interface, do we need to use the same range command as you mentioned previously? Or like
It is for
individually we
switches.
have to add up? Okay.
No. Range command is for whenever you are configuring the switches, you are that
Okay.
time we are using the range command. That is a different.
Okay. Okay. For every customer or for every sub-interface, we need to add it individually only. There is no
Individually.
adding of. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no. So likewise, not much more configuration also. Just interface gigabit 0 by 0 by 0 and .40 and give any IP address for him. IP address 192.168.10.10 or anything you can configure likewise. Just I am showing. So likewise, so whenever you are config, I will show you this. So what is the error we got? I'll show you. But I have explained till anyone any doubt. Before that, we'll move forward. This is sub interface concept. So this method allows you to create sub interfaces on single port of router. Just we discussed single port, single physical port. We created multiple sub interfaces. If there are 10 VLANs, then unlike traditionally legacy, you no need 10 physical ports on router. Instead of this, you can add all VLANs in a single port of router itself, creating virtual interfaces. That is a sub interface. Okay, example fast Ethernet 0 by 1. So 0 by 0 or .1.2 likewise. Just now we discussed the entire thing. So this is all about the router anesthetic method. Before lab will I'll explain you the one more method. This is a we'll check in lab how we'll assign entire thing. Now move to the Inter VLAN routing. In method is L3 switch. That is L3 again. L3 is nothing but our multi-layer switch. This is a multi-layer switch. It's a multi-layer switch. In this multi-layer switch, here the little bit different is there for this method to this method. So for that, so this method allows you to configure inter VLAN routing in switches itself, but for this you need to layer 3 switch. You cannot configure inter VLAN routing layer through. So we cannot configure inter VLAN routing at layer 2 switches. In this layer 2, in this access switches, it will be not possible. It will be not possible. Basically, access switches, so layer 2 switches, they don't have capability. These layer 2 switches not have capability to assign the IP addresses and all. So we cannot configure, and it will be not support also. And this if you are using the IP routing command also, it won't work. So for that we need a above that like 300 series of whichever the series switches. It will be a distribution layer switches, whichever the 3K or top of that, it will be support. So basically, different is it will be maintain only MAC table, and multi-layer switches. If we configured what no switch port command and we assign the IP addresses, and once we enable the routing, so it will be maintain routing table also. It will be like router. It will be act as like router. But if you are using IP routing also, here we cannot use routing table. That is the main difference. So step by step we'll configure both things, and first we'll configure router anesthetic method, our first task, and second task is our multi-layer switch. So legacy method, it's not required. If required, if we have time, we'll configure that method also. Legacy method. So I'll start for that new recording.